put together a short PowerPoint overview of some of the department functions and other things. It was a little bit hard to try and guess what you might find of interest, or maybe things you didn't know or that you'd want to know. So we have left ample time for questions after this presentation, and there's time built in along the tour, etc., for questions. So the order of play is PowerPoint presentation while you're eating, with time for questions and answers relative to the slides. Tour of a small portion of the building through the squad room and out to the Sally Port, where Lieutenant Allen will walk you through the specifics of our patrol vehicles and all the onboard equipment, as well as our Marine unit, our motorcycle and our bicycles, or any other things you want to know about. And then Lieutenant Barton will take you on a tour of the rest of the physical space, and you can certainly ask questions, or maybe you saw it when we had the grand opening and maybe you didn't, but there's plenty of time to see everything and ask whatever questions you have. So we are about to celebrate, when I say about, it's still a couple years away, but it takes some time to plan these things. We're about to celebrate our 50-year anniversary of service to the Colchester community. And we've been providing 24/7, 365 service for almost 50 years in a wide variety of capacities. We put together an org chart that is mostly accurate. I mean, people come and go, the numbers ebb and flow a little bit, but bottom line is this is a visual depiction of the breakdown of the department. Under the Chief of Police are 2 lieutenants, one on the operations side of the house, which is Lieutenant Allen, and the patrol sergeants, which currently are 3. Each have a squad of officers that are responsible directly to that sergeant, and he oversees them, as well as he provides direct supervision to youth services, which are the 2 school-based officers, and the Marine Division officer when that season is underway, usually April through October, so it's about a half of the year. The support lieutenant is over communications and records and IT and the detective bureau. We call it the Bureau of Criminal Investigations. So that's, it's sort of a mishmash. We are a small organization and everybody has to wear a lot of hats. So there's your org chart. Any questions about that? I see her schedule. I see her squinting a little.
So dispatch, do you supervise dispatch, or is that something entirely different?
So communications and dispatch are interchangeable. Some people call it communications. This chart presumes that there's a supervisor for communications. There currently is not a full-time assigned one. In a perfect world, this would have been the admin sergeant position that Charlie Cole had just been moved into, but then he got this great job in the private sector. So there's actually 7 full-time dispatchers with no full-time dedicated supervisor. So this is more a placeholder for a need as opposed to something that's actually happening. Now, that being said, we have 1.6 records clerks, so 1 in a 2/3 position. And the full-time one has served in the role of dispatch supervisor in the past, in more of an administrative capacity, not so much operational. Any other questions on the org chart? We were trying to rack our brains about all the special programs that CPD currently engages in, and this list has changed a little bit over the years, but some of the most popular ones are right on the left side. The Rape Aggression Defense Program is very popular in Colchester. We run 2 or 3 classes a year. Boaters education, hunter education, child passenger safety, car seat inspections, etc. are all very popular programs. I'm sure that you recall that our fitting station, our child passenger fitting station, won the award as the fitting station of the year for the entire state this year. And Corporal Jamie Bresler was the child passenger safety technician of the year for the whole state of Vermont this year. So helping the little ones in our community, generally aged 10 and under, stay safe while they're traveling on our roadways is a huge priority. We do participate in Costco Safety Day. You're going to see on a future slide that there are a lot of outreach opportunities that we are saying no to currently because we don't have any overtime money and we can't pull people off their regular shifts to staff a lot of these. But we do participate in Costco because it is such a big draw and it's right in our backyard, so we take people off shift for that. Honor Guard, other community outreach initiatives, it's a ubiquitous placeholder there. Bicycle patrols, motorcycle unit, domestic violence task force, Acting Sergeant Francis Gagna is our representative to the Chittenden County Domestic Violence Task Force. And interestingly, I'll point out, he's the only regular male member of that group, which I find fascinating, but it's a whole other story. Bike camp, and that's very popular with the kids in the summer, and as is the public safety awareness camp that Corporal Fontaine spends a lot of time on. And folks who attend it tend to come back year after year. So.
I have a question on child passenger safety. Colchester Center Fire Department initially came in looking for a staffing position, and part of the reason for it was to do child passenger safety. And my question to you is, I'll put you in a hot spot here, but what is it that you're not doing that they would have taken on?
I don't think that it's something we're not doing. I think that it would provide greater capacity to be flexible to the general public. Right now, we are only able to accommodate folks during Jamie Bresler and Jeff Fontaine's regular working hours, unless they're participating in a special, checkpoint or whatever. And every time we have to pull Corporal Fontaine out of the schools to come do this, it's a trade-off. You're helping a young child stay safe in their car, but you're taking him out of the schools, which is his full-time assignment. So I believe that that position would augment what we already have in place. Rescue does have one member who's part of the team, so it's not just CPD who participates, but Rescue has a member who's trained as a child passenger safety technician, and they do some by appointment also. So I believe we would just be growing capacity over what we currently have. Other questions about our special programs? We also have a number of special assignments that may or may not have been represented in the organizational chart. We have one officer who is assigned to the patrol division that is assigned full-time, and I say that in air quotes because the priority is always service to the community and answering emergency calls for service. So if an emergency call for service comes up, he will respond to that, but his primary mission is to work on the 3 E's of traffic enforcement: education, enforcement, and engineering. So he does a lot of things beyond just go out on patrol to do traffic enforcement. He looks at state traffic data and crash data to try and inform our responses about where we put our resources. He puts the speed cart out so that people can have a visual in your face of how fast you're going versus what the speed limit is. He uses a device called the JMAR, which is a more discrete tool that we put when people make complaints about speed in their neighborhood. We can actually get real data as opposed to what public perception is around speed. And we gather up data, and then we build if it is indicated, we build an enforcement strategy around what that data actually says in terms of times that the violations are happening, which direction it's happening, etc. So the traffic safety officer is a very important position. It ties directly to one of our department goals that we'll see on a future slide. You already know about the Marine unit. I have had incredible feedback this summer about, and maybe it's, the new guy was really ambitious and enthusiastic, or maybe it was just a new face on the boat, but I've had incredible feedback about Corporal Ackerland and his efforts to do not just enforcement, but education, and a lot of positive PR work out on the water, and very, very visible. We have a K-9 team, which is Corporal Dewey and his K-9 Taser, and they're very active, not just in our agency, but assisting other Chittenden County agencies, doing demonstrations, etc. We have the 2 school-based officers. One is full-time at the Colchester High School, and that's Derek Kendrew currently. And we have one that we call a DARE officer, which basically means that in addition to being certified to teach the DARE curriculum, they also serve in a school resource officer capacity at the lower grade schools. So they do a wide variety of tasks, not just instruction at the schools, but helping with truancy, being a resource point for parents, for staff, faculty and staff. They are obviously the first line of defense on school safety in terms of not just advising, but actually implementing safety protocols. The school-based officers are, we frequently get the question, well, why don't you just pull them out of the school and put them on patrol? And the short answer is, because we would then be sending a different person to the schools constantly, and it would take them 3 times as long to resolve an issue than if they actually know all the players and know the context and the background of any given situation. So we would be responding to the incidents at the school anyway, and this is a much more safe and productive way of doing it.
Jen, could that be outsourced to another enforcement agency?
None that I'm aware of. I mean, I suppose you could go with a private security company if you didn't want to have law enforcement do it, but there isn't any entity like The Chittenden County Sheriff's, I'm not aware, does any type of contract work like that, nor do they have DARE certified officers. In the current world order of Chittenden County law enforcement, I don't know of a law enforcement entity, but I'm sure you could privatize it.
And the problem with that would be, you know, there are stuff that is investigations and working with the schools that requires a law enforcement officer. You know, there are confidentiality issues and that kind of thing that are very specific to law enforcement.
So it's, you know, it's a provocative thought, but I don't know of an alternative off the top of my head.
Do South Burlington and Essex do it?
Yes.
Each one of those agencies has a couple of guys in the schools.
I don't know how many Essex has. South
Essex.
Burlington has an entire youth services unit that has multiple school-based officers, their traffic, their community prevention, crime prevention people. They have a sizable unit.
Last I knew, Essex had, at least during the school year, they have two. Kurt McGillis is their investigator, and then there's another person that goes in and teaches, not DARE, but a similar program.
Winooski has one, Burlington has two, Milton has a school-based
I thought
officer.
there was to have it outsourced, but reporting to CPD.
Who, Essex?
No. He's saying, can you outsource it but have them report to CPD?
That's the process I was thinking.
You know, it's something we could explore and maybe develop your idea some more. We would have to identify the hurdles relative to the confidentiality and the fact that ultimately we would end up having to take any enforcement action anyway. So, I don't know, but it's worth thinking about in the future.
But isn't it also about the relationships that you develop with the school officials as well as you get to
Oh,
know
yeah.
the kids?
There's
Yeah,
lots of
there's-
trouble, we've heard a lot of troubles, and I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
it could be outsourced.
Sure. Well, I think you could maintain the stability of relationships if it was outsourced, as long as it was not like, let's just say you hire a private security company and they put a different person there every week or every month or every day. It's not a post that you fill. It actually would have to be a human being assigned to that function. You know, I think that we could explore that. I don't know of a model like that. I've never heard of that in the country, privatizing it.
Essex has, the Essex Educational Center hires a security staff that, you know,
Bill Ware.
right, Bill
And his
Ware, and I
staff,
think
yeah.
he's got one or two other people that, you know, but they are strictly a security staff.
They
Yeah.
control access to the building, they monitor the cameras, they deal with low-level discipline issues that are school rules, but not violations of law or ordinance. So,
So they would break up fights and things like that.
oh, Bill Ware would break the fight.
Yeah.
We so much. I don't know what their function is. I don't know how their job description is delineated. So, in our Bureau of Criminal Investigations, we have a sergeant that oversees the 3 detectives. One detective is assigned to the Chittenden Unit for Special Investigations, and we normally have 2 detectives in-house. So again, I wasn't sure exactly what you wanted to know or where the gaps in information might be. So I put together what I thought were interesting pieces of slides. So by the numbers, calls for service have stayed relatively the same over the last 5 years, except for this year, our calls for service have gone up by over 1,000. And traffic stops are going up incrementally every year. Now you can see on the next slide, I show a visual depiction of that. And you can see that since we've had a full-time traffic safety officer, that number has gone up fairly dramatically, as one would expect. So when you look at the data, it's not just that there's more to do. There's more to do that takes a lot longer to do. The complexity of the stuff we're dealing with has not, by any stretch, gone down in complexity. Every year it seems to be getting more and more complicated with less officer availability time based on several factors, but not the least of which is we are continuing to get legislative mandates for mandatory training each year, which does not give us more hours in the work week. It takes up more training time and more training resources. The growth in technology requires that our people stay certified or whatever the acceptable level of training is in each of the technologies, and there's a variety of reasons why officer availability is low. Likewise, we have a very mature workforce. We have a very mature workforce who has a lot of time off because that's their contractual benefit or their employment benefit. So there's more work to do and no fewer hours in the day, and in fact more things that we have to do within those 24 hours a day.
Jen, on traffic stops, can you sort of educate me? Over the years, I've heard something along the lines of Winooski keeps more of their ticket revenue than Colchester does because of some
something they've done relative
I think
to?
Doug's gonna have to answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, they have extensive local ordinances, and they have mirrored motor vehicle, the state motor vehicle law. We have some, but not anywhere near what Winooski has for a mirroring of those ordinances. It would take the staffing to go through. Right now, they've got, they've pulled Chief McQueen. His pre-retirement job is rewriting all the ordinances in Winooski for the next, couple months. And Steve and I have talked. I hope to actually, not reinvent the wheel and steal from them. That's on our to-do list, is try to get more of that to recover more revenue from tickets.
It is on our to-do list to adopt local ordinances so that when certain infractions could result in revenue generation, that it would be so. That being said, that's not going to make us write any more tickets because we're basically maxed out.
No, you're catching up now for writing the tickets, but you're not.
We're not getting the revenue, right?
Right,
We're
that's my
doing the
point.
traffic safety work towards the goal that you'll see on a future slide of reducing the frequency and severity of crashes and improving people's overall safety, pedestrians, bicyclists, everybody on our roadways. That is the main goal of having a traffic safety officer, is to create safer roadways. Revenue generation really has never been a consideration until the last couple of years. This discussion has come around, and we really do wish to walk down that road. Again, you're probably going to get the impression from the end, we have a little bit of a capacity issue. We have no administrative support staff to do some of this clerical type researcher work, and everybody in this room, the chief and the 2 lieutenants, wear many, many, many hats with many projects going at any given time. So it is on the list, but it's pretty far down.
And the other question relative to devices, I mean, that trailer is something that's 15, 20 years old.
Oh, it's showing its age, yes.
And a lot of communities have permanent fixtures now that work with LEDs, and they constantly remind you when you're in a zone. Are we looking at?
I did. It's one of the things I looked at when I was at the conference I just went to, was down in Florida, was that very item, because it's got to be replaced. And as soon as we can probably get some grant money and let's replace it.
If LEDs are okay, remember Brian, we had that big discussion about the LED lights weren't actually legal or something like that. So there's some.
They can't flash in a
There's some
certain
discussion
way.
about
Yes, so
how the right way to do it
Right.
is.
Is that why they're down here at the morgues? Is the LED working there still?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yep.
see it,
Okay.
okay.
It doesn't flash all the time.
Okay.
It's head activated.
It's also driven by solar.
Welcome, Vermont.
So this is a visual depiction of our yearly incident volume. As you can see, in 2010, we were just shy of an aggregate, including motor vehicle stops and calls for service. We were south of the 10,000 mark. This year, as projected, we took yesterday's numbers and we divided by 11 and we added back what the monthly average would be. We will be well over 12,000 it's actually over 13,000. It's 1393, I believe. It has fancy tricks. Oh, not on the slide, but on the actual chart. It's fancy. You can hover over it and it tells you. 1393 or something like that.
Right.
So 30% more activity with how many more police officers?
0.
That's-
0. All right, so by the numbers budget, I don't know, most of you were on the select board at this time, so maybe this was more for Jeff's benefit, but in FY 13 and 14, Colchester PD saw a drastic slash in their overtime budgets, and they were necessary measures at the end of the recession, and it was always presumed that those numbers would come back. Last year, we proposed to bring back a fraction of what previously had been in the budget, and it was not included in the budget. So we funded for overtime last year in terms of doing the things that we believe are necessary for outreach, prevention, and other things to achieve our goals that will be coming up. We are working hard to staff outreach initiatives and to do things in off hours and to be out amongst the public in times other than bad times and crisis and crime. We're trying to get out and make positive connections, but we're turning down a lot of opportunities. That's the bottom line. We're not able to get out on the bikes on the bike path. I'm not able to put out bike patrol officers. We're not able to use the motorcycle very often because you have to take someone off the shift. There's just a lot of outreach that we should be doing, in my estimation, that there's no money for. We have an approximately $3.8 million total budget between us and our Public Safety Dispatch Center. And 90% or more, Jeff, is 92% is the cost of human beings, and it is not at all within our control unless we cut human beings. So we have a very small portion of the police budget that is discretionary that we have any control over. So that's the budget kind of overview. Our goals are actually very simple. They were established within the first 6 months of me being chief, and we have not changed them for the next year. We're going to keep the same 4 goals because they make sense and they're what we believe is important to the community. We want to improve traffic safety globally, but very specifically, we're looking to create a reduction in the frequency and severity of crashes. Prior to the double fatal on Route 15, a couple weeks back, we had gone 2.5 years without a fatal crash, which we were really proud of, we were happy about, and it always feels a little bit, you know, it's a horrible event anyway, but it, you know, there's some things you can't prevent, and if I understand correctly, there may be a backstory to that crash, but at any rate, the double fatal crash was the first time in 2.5 years that we've lost a life on Colchester Highway. So the second goal is to increase our public outreach and crime prevention activities. Again, you can't measure what you prevent. You can't measure what type of cohesion or type fabric in your society you create, but we hope to increase all those efforts. Third goal is to reduce the number of drug incidents and related crime, acknowledging that in our efforts to do that, we will see a spike in the number of incidents because as you're looking more for it and you're encouraging people to report it, as you're educating people on what are suspicious things and what they should be reporting, you expect to see a spike in the beginning. As much as the drugs itself and the taking drugs off the street and getting people the help they need and holding people accountable who come to peddle their wares in our community, we really, really hope to cut down on the related violent and property crime because unfortunately in the drug world there's a lot of related violent and property crime. So that is an ambitious goal. And the fourth goal is more of an internal goal. It's to improve employee morale and motivation. So we have a variety of things underway to hopefully do that. So current and future challenges are, you've heard me say it before, you'll hear me say it again. Drugs, addiction, and related crime are everywhere. It's not just Colchester, it is all over Vermont, it's all over the country. But they're complicated crimes and they take a lot of resources. The development around Exit 16 proposes a variety of challenges, not just related to traffic safety, but to getting around, getting our people to and from calls for service and at peak times of the day can be rather onerous. And there's obviously a lot of development up on Water Tower Hill and other places that will increase the overall number of users coming into our community. This is all great for economic development, but it brings with it a demand for police services.
Do you find that difficult because it's on our boundary? In other words, it's far out?
Well, you know, all the boundaries are hard. If you have to go from a call for service down by Juniors and you got to go up to Clay Point Road, you know, short of getting on the interstate, I mean, there's other better examples I could use, but we are very far flung. 38 square miles with 2 police officers covering a shift is a lot.
Yeah, I understand that you're out there, but you know, being on a boundary, it usually have to go further than if it was.
Absolutely.
internal somewhere.
Absolutely.
Have you thought about substations?
I have not personally thought about substations. We are a small enough organization that I think that having eyes on as frequently as possible on your people and not leaving them out on the fringes is probably a good idea. And candidly, our PD is reasonably centrally located in terms of being the spoke in the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty good location. It just, if you happen to be on one of the outlying areas and have to get to one of the other ones, it's a long way. And trying to negotiate Route 7 or Route 15 at peak traffic times takes a long time.
And we have other places that we can go if we need to. You know, we go to St. Lake Security. You know, we've actually done trainings over there, and that's kind of certainly can be a home away from home for us if we need it to be. And there are times when we have failures here, like with our breath testing equipment, for example. We will go to Winooski or we'll go to Essex, or we're really very centrally located as far as resources are around us.
And candidly, as you'll see when we get to Sallyport, the office is their car. So they can go anywhere and it's their office. It's really a matter of taking a break or something like that where you would need a physical structure. So mental health issues and other unmet social service needs create a complexity, a level of time involvement that we are calling on police officers to be a jack of all trades and to try and cope with very complex and rapidly evolving situations. And sometimes the drugs addiction mask themselves as mental health and vice versa. It's a complex environment that the police officers are dealing with right now. Large geographic area, we spoke about that. We have an aging workforce. Today, that's a great boon to me. It is a great boon. Our institutional knowledge is tremendous. Our maturity and, shall we say, equanimity is terrific. But there's going to be a challenge in the very near future as the workforce is eligible to retire. We're looking at between 10 and 12 of our 28 sworn being eligible to retire in the next 3 to 5 years. That's a lot. That's going to bring with it all the challenges of a very young and inexperienced patrol force. So that's definitely going to be a challenge.
You've got more corporals than patrol officers.
We do. So the net number of housing, commercial, and parking units, parking spaces, I mean, you might wonder why I put that in there, but fender benders require police response, and there's a lot of them in, you know, when you get into densely populated areas and build big parking lots. So all those numbers are going up annually. It's exciting to see as a community, but it does create a drain on police resources. So our unmet needs are very, very simple. There's no mystery here. We need more police officers. We need administrative support. And whether or not Bullets A and Bullets B incorporate something for Bullet C, we need a dedicated level of supervision for our public safety communications unit. And I don't know exactly what that looks like in the short term. In the long term, we had a great idea. We were executing on a great idea. And we hope to get back there again. But those are the 3 most immediate needs that we have. And I could not do a presentation without answering Mark's question of why do cruisers idle? The cruisers idle, and it's a very legitimate question. We occasionally, about 2 times a year, maybe 3 times a year, we'll get a question from the public saying, you know, I saw a cruiser and it was idling for a long period of time. Cruisers idle for the primary reason that there is so much onboard equipment that you're going to see when we go out to the Sally Port. And turning them off requires them to reboot. And if you can't allow for the time to properly reboot, in some cases it's 2 to 4 minutes of a gearing up. If you take off out of the parking lot and your onboard camera or whatever piece of equipment is not working, you don't capture the footage that is at the most crucial time. The main reason that we have onboard cameras is to detect violators and to record incidents at their most severity, or when they're going after violators or responding to calls for service is certainly a time where you want your onboard equipment to be working. So the solutions that we've explored have either been completely not cost effective, or they actually have been sort of floated in the marketplace and no longer exist. So we were looking at a dual battery type system, not this past October, the October before, at the IACP conference. And the option was $8,000 to $10,000 per cruiser, and we based that out over the lifespan of the cruiser, and it was not cost effective when you take the cost of gasoline even at the prices last year, etc. And they now no longer offer that for public safety vehicles because it was not designed for public safety vehicles. So we didn't find a single thing on the expo floor. This is the largest law enforcement conference in the world, and there was not a single solution for idling at this year's conference. The only solution was offered by Ford Motor Company that is going to look at addressing that issue in future versions of the 2 Interceptors. They now make just 2 police packages. One is a sedan and one is an SUV, a low-profile SUV. So there might be solutions coming up. Brian and I had some kind of very brief conversations around the possibility of converting to natural gas, which the Bennington County Sheriff's Department did their entire fleet. But it would have to be an entire town-wide effort to make it cost-effective, and the startup costs are huge. You have to convert all the vehicles, you have to have your own fueling station, et cetera, et cetera. And it brings with it all sorts of new training for DPW. I mean, there's complicated potential solutions. There has not been a viable solution to the idling issue for us. We have instructed officers that when they have the opportunity to turn their cruisers off, to not let them idle, but bottom line is if you see a cruiser idling, it's because a police officer is on duty and prepared to respond to emergencies, and they need to keep their onboard equipment running.
So
Or there's a police dog in the car.
you can't plug them in
Plug in what?
the car.
You can't plug them in out in the general public while you're,
No, I mean, just right here, for instance.
not on their current configuration. Is that a possible alternative?
Yeah, it'd be a bunch of converters, but
That was one option that we did look at 2 years ago, or a little over a year now. That option was no longer being presented.
Oh, I was thinking towards the future,
Yeah.
not changing.
You know, clearly we're not the only organization that has this challenge. So there's got to be a fertile ground here for somebody to come up with something very creative. I am confident that not just for fuel efficiency, but to reduce our carbon footprint, that we are going to start seeing solutions, and clearly Ford has already acknowledged that that's something that they're going to be incorporating. So we don't have a solution to present to you. We don't even have our arms around a potential solution. The one that we thought we might be getting a hold of, that we talked about last year, is no longer an option. So you knew I had to talk about that, right?
Well, the problem is the public is expected to turn that in, they ask us.
Agreed,
why-
agreed. I mean, I understand it's a very, as I said, it's a very legitimate question and concern that we hear a few times a year. And I've never once presented the explanation and have someone say, well, that's not good enough. Until we have a better solution, particularly in the climate that we're in, the extremes, there's just no better way unless we can come up with, somebody can come up with, and maybe this could be your retirement job, would be to come up with a great technology and sell it to all the police departments in the country.
Did you just announce something?
Yours,
Oh.
not mine. Yours, I'm looking at you. No, engineering would not be the way I'm gonna be making my millions, no way.
Chief, can you talk about staffing a little bit in terms of both dispatchers and patrol, how they're manned, particularly on the
Staff?
Staff.
Sorry.
That's all right, that's all right.
welcome to the club.
So, that's
Better you
right.
than me.
That's right. So in terms of how we staff our shifts?
Numbers of people on shift.
Sure, sure. So in our dispatch center, there are times that we've identified as being our busiest times, and we mandate that there would be at least 2 people in there, which, if I say at least, it means there's 2. There's very rarely, if ever, 3, unless somebody's training. And so we go with 1 person during the quote quiet times, which is probably 66% of the time.
Well, 2 are always scheduled.
Correct. 2 are always scheduled, but there's a variety of reasons why only 1 would be there: elective leave, training, etc. So there are times where we require 2, and then the rest of the time 1 is considered acceptable. I have said since the day I walked in the door here, I don't find 1 to be acceptable. I don't have a solution without adding bodies. The future might bring more bodies, and particularly if we start regionalizing, or at least semi-regionalizing some of the dispatch centers, then that brings the opportunity to have more human beings in the dispatch center at any given time. On a day-to-day basis, it evens out the workload, it creates a less frenetic work pace, but the real issue is when multiple large-scale incidents, or even 1 large-scale incident is going on, you currently have 1 dispatcher dispatching for 2 police departments, 3 fire departments, and 3 rescue departments between Milton and Colchester. 1 person, and if you've got multiple incidents, even if they're small, even if it's just a CO2 detector for 1 fire department, an ambulance call for another, couple of things out in the police world for each department, you've got 1 dispatcher handling multiple radio frequencies, multiple phone lines, and trying to document all that information. I don't feel it's sufficient. In terms of the patrol staff, I'm going to let Lieutenant Allen discuss that.
It's kind of the same thing. During peak hours, we have identified the need for a certain number, and we actually don't like talking about it publicly, so I will tell you that it's a certain number. And there are minimums to that number as well. And more often than not, we're at the minimums, not the maximums. Scheduled, they're always kind of the same thing as dispatch. There are scheduled more officers than we have minimums. And I would say in patrol, we have more than our minimums most of the time.
Right. So we do workload analysis to determine when we need more officers, and that's how the shifts are also built. We have a variety of shifts, some are 10, some are 12 hours, and they start at different times. They're staggered, so there's never a mass exodus or anything like that. So it's all done based on when our actual calls for service are happening, etc. So, and we look at that data every year or 2 to see if our shifts are still where they should be and if staffing is where they should be. Bottom line is we're trying to run an entire patrol division 24/7, 365 with 16 people. That's a lot.
5 years now. It's partially funded by the Federal Recreational Boating Safety Grant. We get money through the state for that. And, this is the primary patrol boat now because it's got the better electronics package. It's got the better layout and design than some of the older boats we've had. But it's a very nice boat to work out of.
How many more years does it have?
This is usually on a 10-year replacement cycle. And again, the grant we get, it's a federal recreational boating safety grant that gets dispersed out to each state, and then each state administrator, which for us is the Vermont State Police Recreational Enforcement, they disperse that money to the agencies that participate in the boating safety program. So these boats are usually on a 10-year replacement, and it's a 50-50 matching grant. So the money that we get goes into capital fund, and then when that comes up, it goes on there. Within the grant, it allows us to repower the boat after the first 5 years. So these were brand new engines this year.
Okay.
And that's, again, a 50-50 match on those. And it also covers, I'm on it full time from May to September, so it covers half my salary, half our fuel, half our equipment, everything we spend on it.
So it's in year 9, it's about...
This is in year 5 right now.
Year
Yeah,
5.
it's a 2009 boat, so it just came off its 5th season.
All right.
So we'll get a full 5 more years out of it as the primary boat, and then the plan would be to maintain it as a secondary boat, which is what we did with the last boat. The last boat's a 1999 boat, and we got this one into primary service. That stayed on as a secondary boat to back up in case this one goes down during the summer. That boat has a fire pump on it, so it assists the fire department. We can run dive operations out of it with a technical rescue team. We can do a lot of different things. It's just nice to have a couple of boats we can use when we need them. Because any 911 call that happens on Lake Champlain gets routed to them directly first. So even if you're in Mounts Bay, if you call 911 from your cell phone, the Coast Guard's going to get it as well. And once they figure out where that person is, they're going to call us immediately. So.
Can you train with them?
Yep. We do some, interdepartmental training. We have, the thing with this, there's only so many boats on the lake, so it's really kind of we've got a lot of MOUs with other agencies and even across the border into New York, to where we'll all work together. If they've got a big case going on or a big search going on by Valcour Island, we go over there and help them with that. Clinton County Sheriffs will come over and help us. They maintain 2 boats in the summertime that they run a couple shifts a day on. So they're the closest backup.
The system that was built in is an airflow that sucks all the smelly wet boots and everything out of the area. For those of you who remember our former locker room, which was men's and women's together, it was probably about the size of that bathroom right there. So you can see that we definitely moved up a bit. The lockers that you see, can take everything that a person has, secure area. And anyone at Town Hall who wants to use this is given a code for the back door and can come in and use this room, and they don't get into the space. So it's available to the town employees, and it's utilized, it was utilized quite a bit. I haven't checked recently. But it's far from what we had before.
A conference room, or sometimes people come and need to use a laptop or do something, they just need some space to have a meeting. It's there, and this is my office. You're welcome to poke around in each. I didn't do any special cleaning for you, but